Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the latest edition of the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Elyachar, the chief content producer and writer of jakestake.com, a pop culture entertainment news website. Now, if you're watching us on YouTube, please give us a thumbs up. If you're listening to this on our audio platforms, please give us a 5-star rating and download this episode and more episodes. Saturday Night Live is 50. I can't believe it. And the perfect jackass is joining me today. He is the founder of Saturday Night Network, one of the largest SNL fan podcasts. As of this recording, the SNN Network has over 13,600 Twitter followers, 26,300 YouTube subscribers. I'm one of them. And also 28,900 Instagram followers. Please help me welcome Jon Schneider to the podcast.
Wow, thank you. So what an introduction, Jacob. Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Jon, it's a privilege to have you. We both love SNL, so I thought, what a big thing. I'm having a hard time to reach Studio 8H, so this is the next best thing.
That's okay. I'm happy to talk SNL with you. I love talking SNL with everybody, so I'm happy to be on here. Yeah, for sure. This is exciting.
All right, so let's get started, my friend. So when did you get interested in the entertainment industry, and how did that passion evolve into desire to pursue a career in our industry?
Oh, wow. Okay, so this is a good question. I grew up in the Jewish community, and I would go to bar mitzvahs and weddings, and I used to see like entertainers perform there. And I thought those people were really cool because I never had the talent to like sing and become this like musical performer, but I was like, maybe I could like host events. So when I got old enough, I became a DJ and an MC. And I would go out to events and host these, big parties for, hundreds of people on some of the best days of their lives. And it was truly like my passion. And but I had always like had a second passion for pop culture, just like you, and being interested in what was happening in Hollywood and all of that stuff. And then COVID came around in 2020, and I was sort of, lost a little bit because there was naturally no events that were happening, and I didn't know what to do with myself pretty much. So I was like, I wanted to get into the podcasting game. I had like done a couple things with friends, but I wasn't really sure. Like nothing I felt like had a real plan until I said to myself, like, why don't I just like talk about my favorite show? So that was sort of the beginnings of getting into covering Saturday Night Live.
I agree, fellow member of the tribe here, and I totally agree. Bar, I have so many memories of B'nai Mitzvah days and wedding days as well. So you did an amazing. So, all right. So, what drew you to SNL in the first place?
For me, it was really just this idea that the show is sort of like the lens into, pop culture. It's a show that if you don't, follow the news every day, the not so serious news, the stuff about what celebrities are doing, what music is popular, what movies are doing well, SNL could sort of give you that a little bit. So when I was in high school, I mean, I checked out the show a little bit and always thought it was funny. But when I was in high school, it was a really great way to connect with friends. And I had like basically, this is the story that, Lorne Michaels often tells about, why SNL connects with people of a certain age group. But I was definitely the target for this, where I was young enough that I wasn't going out like every weekend to like clubs and stuff like that, but I was old enough to stay up and watch the show. So as a way to bond with friends on Saturday nights when we would get together, like 11:30 would hit, and then we would turn on SNL and watch it. And what I found is that like it was a really cool way to develop inside jokes with friends. We would come to school on Mondays, and then all of a sudden, everyone would be talking about the sketches that happened. And I got really lucky, Jacob, because my era of SNL that was when I was in high school is considered like one of the better eras of the show. So for us, like we felt like every weekend was just another exciting weekend to watch it. And I fell in love with it that way.
Absolutely. For me, it goes back to all of that and graduating from all that and going to SNL. So I think when I started SNL watching, it was like the best of Molly Shannon, best of Will Ferrell. So many of those incredible things. And I got to remember, and some of my all-time favorites, if I could say cast members, for me, it was Dana Carvey, it was Molly Shannon, it was Will Ferrell, it was Chris Rock, it was Adam Sandler, and Sherry O'Terry is always in same with I love Kristen Wiig, and I thought Kate McKinnon, and of course my favorite SNL anchors, the dynamic duos of Jimmy Fallon and Tina Fey and Amy Poehler and Seth Meyers and Cecily Strong, and finally, of course, Shay and Just, aka the most infamous odd couple SNL has ever seen.
Yes. Yeah, and that's so cool that you related to so many different cast members. I mean, for me, like I said, the era that I sort of grew up on SNL in was, Fred Armisen, Bill Hader, Will Forte, Kristen Wiig, Jason Sudeikis. Like, those were my people, and I loved getting to see them every single week. And they were on for so many years, and just like the things that they would do. Andy Samberg, Lonely Island, like we would just have so much fun with them. And after they started to leave the show back, towards the early 2010s, I was a little bit trying to like figure out, okay, like what is my relationship to the show without all of these cast members there? And then the 40th anniversary of the show came around in 2015, which is almost 10 years ago. And that's when I was like, oh, I got to go back and watch all of these old eras of the show to understand what's really going on here, because they brought back all of, the people from the 70s and 80s and 90s and stuff. So that was part of the journey towards beginning my SNL podcasting, was going back and watching every episode from 1975 until now. And that we went from there.
Absolutely. That special reminds one of my all-time favorite TV things of all time. That Celebrity Jeopardy sketch. Oh my God. So many amazing memories. Long R.I.P. Norm Macdonald and Turd Ferguson. Still one of my all-time favorites. And seeing them go in and do all of that, I don't think it's going to be very tough when they have the 50th anniversary special to top what they did in 40.
Yeah, I think they have some big plans, but they're really making the whole year feel like a big party. And listen, like whatever they do, I'm gonna love it, because this is the time. We don't know that like SNL, like the future of SNL is up in the air. Like I think that it's going to continue, and I hope it continues forever. But there's certainly going to be some turnover. A lot of the greats that have walked through the stage are getting a little bit older. So I do feel like this is the show. This is the time where we can truly celebrate the entire history of the show. When we get to SNL 60 or 75 or whatever they do next, not everybody will be there. So I think that this is going to be a really fun year to celebrate the entire show.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what have been some of the challenges that you faced like building up this network of building up this network, and how do you overcome those obstacles?
I think when we first started, we started as a podcast called SNL Stats. So we've rebranded a couple times throughout our few years of doing this. I started as a podcast called SNL Stats because I was really interested in the statistics component of Saturday Night Live. I love professional sports. So for me, like live television, watching sports is a little equivalent to Saturday Night Live. At the end of the day, it's like a competitive show, right? Because, if you're a comedian or a stand-up sketch performer and you get cast on the show, your goal is to actually write sketches and get them on the show. And then in the hopes that you have a successful career, that people will get to know you and then, support you when you go out into the world and you do future projects like film and television. So there is a path towards success that creates a competitive environment, and in which case I decided that I wanted to like follow it and see if I could track data to sort of see how one cast member was doing better than another. So we started the podcast called SNL Stats, and I had journalists from different media publications come on with me and sort of look at it from a stats angle. And it was really fun and exciting to get to like talk about things and being like, okay, here's milestones they're reaching, here's how they're doing. But I think we were limited in the scope of just looking at SNL from that perspective. I felt like we had a really good product, but the growth potential of just staying limited to looking at the show from one angle, like a show that's been so historic and brilliant, was challenging. So we then eventually, rebranded and became Saturday Night Network, because I figured, what if we had a network of podcasts that did different things? We have the capacity. We have podcasters from all around the world who join us and rotate on all of our shows. So why can't we have an after show right after the show airs at 1 a.m.? why can't we also do a roundtable where we talk about the best moments of the week and what the episode really means in the context of the history of the show? And why can't we also do some sort of statistics based show? And that's sort of where we grew from there. So I think a lot of the challenges, Jacob, for this long answer is just, how do we grow and move past a ceiling in an industry where there's no clear answers? There's no like, hey, this is the path that you take to be successful at podcasting. You have to just keep trying things and seeing what works. So that's sort of where I'm at.
And that's amazing. That's amazing. We're going to get to this. One of the things that got you on my radar is the recurring video segment. And I got to say this, everything you need to know about SNL. So when did you and your co-host James Stevens decide to start the series?
So that was a project that I think we thought of a couple of years ago. I mentioned that I really, was into the 40th anniversary, and it inspired me to go back and watch all these old episodes of the show. And I know that like through talking and meeting SNL fans, there's a lot of people who watch like the current episodes that want to know about old seasons or old eras of the show, but don't have the time to go back. Um, so because of that, I said to James, who does a lot of work with me behind the scenes of the Saturday Night Network, he also hosts some interview podcasts with me. And I said, like, I really wish there was a way that people can catch up on old seasons of SNL without having to watch 1,000 episodes of television. So we came up with a concept. We were like, what if we do bite-sized versions of every season where, like, if you're having dinner and you have your computer or your phone next to you and you want to watch something, you could just watch the story of season 1 or everything you need to know about season 2. So that was the concept.
All righty. I love that concept. And I picked out, as of this recording, you have gone up to, I believe, 89, 90, if that's correct.
That is correct, yeah.
All right, so I picked out five of my favorite seasons that I love learning about. So we got to start with from the very beginning, season 1, 95, 96. So what were some of the fascinating insights that you found from SNL's original cast?
Oh man, I mean, 75, so 75, 76, that original season is absolutely fascinating. So fascinating that there's a movie that's out now. I got to go to the premiere of the Saturday Night film, a Jason Reitman film that is sort of it tells the story of what SNL looked like before that first episode. And it is a really, going back to watch the real episodes, it is really, really fascinating to watch it. It's a little bit slow. You look at SNL now and you look at SNL then, and it looks very different, at least for the first few episodes, where you get to meet these very raw, talented performers, and they don't know exactly what the show is going to look like. It looks more like a variety show where you're going to have like specialty acts and music performers that intertwine with sketches until eventually they figure out what works and the show starts to like build upon itself. So for me, like if you're interested in just like seeing the bare bones of how this whole thing came together, season 1 is fascinating. It's truly the start of like an incredible journey through 50 years.
Awesome. So we got to talk about season 5 because it was the last of the golden age of that cast.
Yeah, that's also a weird season. So for those who don't know, the original era of the show is often considered seasons 1 through 5 because that's when the last of the original cast left the show after season 5. But we did lose some people along the way. So Chevy Chase was the huge star of the original season of the show. He leaves. They bring in Bill Murray partway through the second season. And then we sort of have this, like new original cast. And then at the end of season 4, with the success of, the Blues Brothers and things that are happening outside of the show, Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi, two of SNL's biggest stars, leave the show. And it sort of like leaves them scrambling in season 5 where they're trying to figure out like how to replace them. Because of that, they take like a lot of writers that they've had in the writer's room and put them on the show as featured players. So it's a little bit of a jumbled mess, but it is a beautiful ending to a first 5 years where, behind the scenes, it was, very druggy, a lot of chaos. People were very tired and stuff like that. But it is so cool to get to see, them try and stick it out for this one last year. And then at the end of the season, they say goodbye. Buck Henry, one of the most famous hosts from the first 5 years, says goodbye. The on-air sign turns off, and if you didn't know, you could watch the end of season 5 and think that SNL never came back because it just literally closes the book on the show.
And then we have season 6. Lauren took off, and there were so many wild cards in there until the arrival of a certain guy named, I believe his name is Eddie Murphy.
Yeah, so season 6 is a controversial season for sure. A lot of people don't like the season. It's considered, widely considered like one of the most challenging seasons to watch. But it is also a very interesting season. It is, as you said, the first time that Lorne Michaels, who runs the show, is no longer there. Jean Doumanian, who had worked with Lorne for a few years, is given the reins. Even though Lorne, didn't necessarily want her to be the successor, she is. She ends up hiring performers, and they start season 6 with a sketch where they're lying in bed with Elliot Gould, all the cast members, talking about, oh, you're a mix between this cast member and this cast member, and you're a mix between this. So basically, like when you're watching the show, you're already getting preconceived opinions about all of these cast members. And it is like a very difficult thing. Imagine you have all of these best friends and all of a sudden they're gone. And then you have to just like, you get new replacement friends. Like it's very weird to watch. The structure of the show feels different. There's probably like, I don't know, in an average episode, there's like 7 sketches. There's probably like 15 sketches per episode in season 6 because they just do them in short bursts. So like, it's really weird. So much so that the ratings were so bad that Gene ends up getting fired towards the end of the season. Then they bring in Dick Ebersol for the last episode of season 6, who was, one of the original people who helped Lorne start Saturday Night Live. And he, gets rid of some of the cast members. He brings in some new ones. So it's a really like interesting path that we go on. Of course, as you said, probably the most fascinating part, it is the origin story of Eddie Murphy, who had not been hired for season 6, but kept calling the offices and asking for an audition. And then they needed somebody to go out and do some stand-up and stuff like that, and put him on Weekend Update. And eventually they just saw like, oh, we have some real talent here. And it is the story of how he eventually becomes the next star of the show.
Absolutely. So now let's jump back 5 years later, season 11, the return of Lorne, and a couple of major players start to make their presence known. And please, I believe Jon Lovitz was this season for Jon, and I believe Dennis Miller was there. Victoria Jackson started showing up, and then of course a guy named Dana Carvey.
So yes. So a couple of those are right. So basically what happens here is Dick Ebersol stays on for a few years between 6 and 10. He's sort of running the show, and he wants to turn the show eventually into it being all pre-tapes. That's, what he wants. He wants to hire performers on a year-to-year basis that aren't necessarily raw talents. He wants to bring in like major stars. So that's why the season prior to this, in season 10, you get a lot of like really big names like Martin Short and Christopher Guest and stuff like that, who come in. So it's sort of considered like an all-star season of cast members, but nothing ever really connects. So SNL's basically on the verge of cancellation until NBC offers Lorne an opportunity to come back after 5 years. He had been away doing his own projects. He started a show called The New Show. It wasn't so successful. They bring him back. He comes in and he hires a whole new cast of characters, and it wasn't so great. This was like sort of like a do-over year where he's like, this isn't working, except for, as you said, Jon Lovitz, who has these characters, this recurring pathological liar character that really connects with the audience. Dennis Miller, who's brought back for Weekend Update to do the news, and there hadn't been anybody since really Chevy and Jane and Bill Murray probably back in the day that really connected with the audience at the news. So he's great. And then Nora Dunn is another cast member who was brought back for that season, and she ends up being brought back for the following season. But, it's a crazy season, Jacob, because at the end of it, they do a very famous sketch where they bring all the cast members into a locker room and they light it on fire. And basically, as if they're going to kill everybody, except Lorne grabs Jon Lovitz and pulls him out and makes him go to his limo so that he could save him and bring him back next year. So like they knew how bad the show got. But it's fun to get to see it on screen so many years later.
Okay, I apologize. I jumped a little bit too early because that's how much I really admire some of these cast members in their work.
Yeah, it's all good.
All right, so now we get to 88, 89, season 14. Now we have the foundation of what's to come. We have the people like Dana Carvey. We have John still there. Nora's still there. We have Dennis is still there, if I remember correctly. And then I believe Victoria's still on.
Yes, Victoria is still on them. Yeah.
Okay. And then we add a guy who probably is an international man of mystery, Mr. Mike Myers. And we see the start of one of the biggest recurring segments of all of the 80s and 90s generation, Wayne's World.
Yeah, this is season 14 is considered one of, if not the best season in the history of the show. A lot of people feel like there's like no bad episodes in this season. And, after season 11 that we just spoke about, season 12 is really the do-over season where they bring in new cast members like Phil Hartman and Dana Carvey and, Victoria Jackson, Jan Hooks. And it becomes what a lot of people refer to as the second golden era. So season 12 is that, starting up point. Season 13 is a season that gets cut short because of a writer strike. So the potential of it was mitigated by the lack of episodes. But season 14 is a full season where everything comes together and is, widely considered to be a great season, especially because we get, to meet Mike Myers for the first time, who comes on as a feature player. We also meet Ben Stiller, who you may know from outside of SNL, who does 4 episodes on that season. But yeah, Mike was a great addition to this cast, and right away connected with Dana Carvey, and they end up doing Wayne's World, and it becomes one of the most popular recurring segments in the history of the show, and led to 2 really successful movies. So at this point, a lot of people felt for many years that SNL was never going to be what it was in the original days, but by season 14, SNL becomes an institution more, because now they see that it's less about the cast and more about like how the show can make this cast work. And yeah, I mean, I just think it's a brilliant thing to get to see that they could replicate this success in another era. And I think we're seeing that a lot in our YouTube comments of a lot of people saying like, oh, you know what, I stopped watching SNL after the 70s, but to see these videos and see the cast, I realized that there was another era that really clicked.
And then pretty soon we have the 90s, and that's when we have the superstars come in. The Spades, the Farleys, the Sandlers, the Rucks.
Yeah, often considered they call them like the bad boys of SNL. So, once these second golden era cast members are starting to tail off a little bit, we get to see that, these new performers come in and they make a huge impact. They're a little bit more hit or miss for me than what we get to see in the late 80s, early 90s, but certainly like very well remembered as being, a big part of SNL history.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you had the opportunity to speak with several cast members and creative leads who have played a big role in in SNL history through your SNL story segments. So what were some of your most memorable conversations, and why did they stand out?
Yeah. So, one of the great things about the podcast, and this was like nothing that we ever could have expected when we first started, but it took off to the point where people at the show who are currently working there, are listening to the show on a weekly basis. And I think they think we're pretty fair about commentary about their sketches. So I had heard from, people, cast members, crew members who had listened and, sent us like, good messages of like, keep it up, keep talking about the show. We love getting to hear your thoughts on it. And because of that, and because of the success, we ended up, connecting with NBC, and we're now, considered press for Saturday Night Live. Like, we're on their press list where, a lot of media publications are there, but we're one of the first podcasts to ever like sort of connect with the show in that way. And because of that, we get to interview current cast members and sometimes SNL alumni. So of the current cast, we've spoken to a few of them. We spoke to James Austin Johnson, Andrew Dismukes, Heidi Gardner, Mikey Day on the show. And, just getting to speak to them and hearing about, their sketches, what they're working on, what really drives them on a week-to-week basis is really exciting for me. it's not even just about like, oh, okay, so you did this sketch and people liked it and it was funny. Like, why was that? It's really like the psychology of like being in this environment and, producing and how, an idea comes from somebody's head, gets put down on paper, and then the SNL crew gets to put this idea out for millions of people, and all done in a span of a few days, which is sort of a miracle that I think is absolutely fascinating. So that's the current cast, and then we've also had the privilege of getting to talk to former SNL cast members. I think Bobby Moynihan is one of my favorite interviews that we've ever done. We got to speak to him a couple times to hear about his career. Other cast members from like the 80s, Gary Kroger, Mary Gross, we just spoke with. I'm trying to think who else. Oh, Daryl Hammond, we spoke with recently as well. But yeah, I mean, we probably spoken to or interviewed about 25 SNL cast members at this point, and I enjoy every one of them.
Alrighty, so who are the dream conversations and the dream guests to come on SNL Stories?
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, Will Forte has been my favorite cast member of all time. I've met him in person and spoken to him, and he's like a super nice guy. He's definitely
absolutely. I actually had the opportunity to meet Will as well. Really, when he was in Kansas City for one of the early fundraisers for the Children's Mercy fundraiser. So he's really cool.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's the one that Heidi works at a lot. Yeah, I'm hoping to get there next year actually at some point. So if you're listening,
if you come to Kansas City, let me know.
Oh, is that where you are?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I will definitely let you know. I'm hoping to get out there next year because Heidi and her brother Justin have been like really encouraging me to come out, and I couldn't make it last year, but I'm hoping to this year. It would be kind of fun. But yeah, the Big Slick, that's what it's called. But I love Will so much, and that would be like for me personally an ideal interview. Obviously, like getting to talk to like some of the best to ever do it: Dana Carvey, Will Ferrell, Kristen Wiig, Bill Hader. I think those would be dream interviews just to hear because like a lot of people like that's Mount Rushmore. Unfortunately he's not around anymore. But if I ever would have got the chance to speak to Phil Hartman, I mean that would have been unbelievable. But yeah, those are some of the dream interview guests.
Absolutely, absolutely. For me, I gotta say I would add Myers and Seth Meyers into it. I'd definitely bring Tina Fey because she was a huge part of my SNL. Same with Molly. Same with Adam.
Yeah, that would be so cool. I mean, the great thing about SNL for all of the generations that have watched the show is that like there's an endless number of people to just talk to about the show, and that's what's so cool.
Awesome. So as of right now, we are 2 episodes into SNL 50. In addition, we also have Decision 2024 going on as well. So how have you seen the first 2 episodes? As this recorded, we've seen there's 2 episodes. How have they started to tread the line saying, okay, there's an election, but this is also our grand anniversary year?
Yeah, it's tough because I feel that, through watching these 2 episodes, that the cold opens that we get are almost like different shows from the rest of the show. Like you could do a podcast on just the SNL cold opens in season 50 so far, and then the rest of the show because it just feels so jarringly different. But, talking about the politics, I think it's fascinating how they decided to handle it. A lot of people who are really big SNL fans would have preferred that SNL just taken their current cast and had placed them as impressions for the political figures. But over the last 12 years or so, I think that what Saturday Night Live has found is that, it's been really successful for them in terms of viewership and interest and people talking about the show in bringing in some like really big names to play these political figures. So, former cast members Maya Rudolph, Dana Carvey, and Andy Samberg have been brought back for the fall to play these characters. And I kind of love it. Like, I don't think that every single, person has to be played by a former cast member or a special guest. I mean, Jim Gaffigan's been doing Tim Walz, and I don't know that was something that we absolutely needed. But as far as like going back into its history and choosing former cast members to play these people, I'm totally cool with it. So I think it's something that's been really exciting. What I've enjoyed in these first couple episodes is just that I don't feel like they're, necessarily look at SNL, at this point in their history, like leans left, but the writing itself has been like pretty fair to both sides. They're sort of going after everybody. And like, that's what the core of the show should be, is just sort of like making light of what is a very serious thing for a lot of people.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I got to say this, there are a lot of I know that you've been paying attention to a lot of news and everything, especially with Lauren about Mr. Michaels is ready to pass the torch. And there's been a lot of argument going on that is speculation. It's either Seth Meyers or Tina or Keenan. Those are the names that have been going in and out. Do you think that this name race is going to take away from the anniversary, is this is this race going to be, or are they going to leave the 50th anniversary alone and focus on Lauren's legacy?
I think if you would ask me last year, I would have said definitely, but I don't think so anymore. I think he sort of put the kibosh on getting replaced now. I mean, he's um I don't know how many more years he can do this, and like I wish obviously for his health forever, but it's just he's getting older, and there will be a succession plan put in place. But I don't know that it's going to be next year. It could be in 2 years, it could be 3 years, 4 years, whatever it is. And my feeling on it is that it's not necessarily going to be one of those people that's going to take over the show. It could be some sort of committee. There could be somebody that's brought in as like a fall guy, and then like the real person is sort of waiting in the wings. But if I had to guess, I would say that like whoever the successor is to Lorne Michaels is probably somebody that will be hired as like an assistant producer, or is already an assistant producer, and is sort of just slowly waiting to take that role in the future. So I think the conversation, Jacob, around who will take over will be more of a season 51, 52 conversation at this point.
Awesome, awesome. So we got to start winding down our conversation. So what are you looking forward to the most as SNL continues its 50th anniversary celebration?
I mean, I love what some of the cast members have said when they've done interviews this year, is that they feel like this year is going to be like a 21-week party. And, this past week on the show, we still got, we got our cold open with our, cameos. We got Nate Bargatze coming back to the show and doing an amazing, performance and sketches. And, he was awesome. But we also got a segment towards the end of the night where The Lonely Island was there, and they did a music video. And that was like, for people like me who grew up with them, like that was like, oh wow, like we're getting this again. I felt like it was like back in my days of being in high school and like talking about the digital shorts. And like I think that's what the show should be this year. The show should be, it should feel like season 50, where the current cast still gets to cook, still gets to like be in sketches and do their thing, but give us like one segment an episode for something throwbacky. Like if Dana Carvey's in the building, give us a church lady sketch,
Absolutely.
Just one. That's it. That's all I need. Like, I don't want the show to feel like it's a show from the 80s, but I could still feel like just give us one thing. You can involve the current cast in it. And that's what this should be. That's how you make this a 21-week party, is you make it feel like a show from 2024 and 2025, but it has throwback natures to it. So you have to watch every week to see what may pop up.
I agree, because one day I'm ready for Will Ferrell and Gasgar to get the corpse ready, and maybe Dionne Warwick's waiting in wings to bash them in the head.
Exactly. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, because that'd be fun to see Ego's Dionne Warwick back.
Yeah, that would be so much fun. Yeah, and like again, that's all we can ever dream of, is getting to see our favorites from different eras, be together in sketches and stuff like that. And we're gonna get a lot of that during the 50th anniversary celebration in February. But just to see little bits throughout this season, I think will be very exciting.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, last question: are you ready?
Always.
Where should my audience check out Saturday Night Network, and also where should they connect with you on social media?
Sure. So you can find Saturday Night Network on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, really wherever you listen to podcasts. So you can search us up there to see everything we do. We do all of our shows on video. I think if you just want to like ease in a little bit to the SNL content, you're thinking about joining, we do live chats. So we record all of our shows live, so you can comment, and we bring in some of your comments into the chats. It's a really interactive experience, and you get to meet other SNL fans from around the world. So it's a great place to go. We also have a Patreon where you can connect with us even further, and we have exclusive shows for patrons, and a Discord server for you to hang out and meet other SNL fans. And then on social media, you can follow us at the SNL Network on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X. We put up a lot of really fun content every single week about statistics about the show and behind the scenes moments and things like that, so you can sort of follow along and be completely up to date on everything SNL.
Awesome. So, guys, If you miss an episode of the Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar podcast, visit our channels on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Podchaser, Spotify, and Spreaker. Jake's Take with Jacob Elyachar, JACOB, What's JACOB, And now, are you on social media? Because I'm on social media too. Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Twitter, and YouTube. Jacob Elyachar, JACOB, Want to find out all my thoughts on America's Got Talent, The Masked Singer? See all my podcast interviews? Visit jake-shake.com. Once again, jake-shake.com. Jon, it was a privilege to have you on, and we got to do this after after season 50 cools up. I would love to have you back on.
Of course, I would love that. And seriously, thank you for having me.
You're so welcome, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, have a great one, everybody. Goodbye.